Welcome to a new episode here in the Energy Bridge. Today we have the pleasure to have Philip Hahn from CyberGrid, expert in flexibility and virtual power plants. We're going to explore your interesting profile because you were part of the utility when they acquired the virtual power plant, and now you are kind of head of it. So interesting shift to be both part of the table, kind of in the same solution. So it's amazing. Thank you for being here today.
Yes, thank you for having me. It's a pleasure for me.
Yeah, thank you very much, Philip. I mean, you were part of our last forum as well. You gave a very interesting presentation, and since then we have been chasing you, but finally we made it. So very welcome.
Okay, thank you. I hope
Yes.
I made it not too hard, but I'm not so active on LinkedIn. So thank you that you had the patience.
Oh, sure, we go for it.
Philip, please walk us through your strong technical background and also your education journey and your work journey, getting to the head of flexibility at CyberGrid. Like, how was the journey and what you did?
Yeah, I never planned it, business development, but I was studying electrical engineering on the Technical University. Then in my bachelor's, I need to decide, should I make my master's more into direction automation or energy? Back then I chose first automation, but with an internship at EVN. Everything with EVN started back then. And that woke up my interest in the energy sector because I was working in it. Very quickly I had some responsibilities in projects, and it really was for me fascinating. Before I was super interested in it, and then I was paid for my interest and I really enjoyed it. And
That's it, right?
then more and more on university side, I also picked some classes in that direction. Very technical side first, and then all the economy side of energy economy came then, I would say, naturally. And that was also, for me, super interested, because before it was just how the physics behind are working and all the electric magnetic field and so on, and that the generation is working. And then immediately euros per megawatt hour and the market, and also all the regulations behind it to create all of this that someone is willing to do and has the incentives. All of that came then naturally on the side, and that was actually my path from studies to work.
And what would your exact role at EVN at first?
Yeah, at first, I started with, it was planned a 1 month internship. One day before I started, they asked me if I can stay 2 months because they need a little bit support in a project. And actually it turned out that this project took then a little bit longer, and still I more or less do the same. So I started for actually a flexibility management system project. That was my first day. I was sitting on a table with the huge project team, and we were talking about how we can use which flexibility on different markets and so on. Today I'm sitting here talking more or less about the same, but before I was on the receiver side. So that was the time when I was allowed to gain a lot of knowledge. Actually, most of the project also failed. So by these mistakes and by this failing, I think I learned even most. And that was then later we will talk about, I think, all of the further step and where then CyberGrid came into place, and I was allowed then to lead the project on the EVN side.
Yeah. So before going to CyberGrid, you were in EVN, which is a utility, and utility are known for being a bit of conservative and focus on safety and reliance. And you were fostering flexibility from inside. So what would you say that is the biggest misunderstanding about flexibility?
The working environment of the old-fashioned utility, since the separation, this unbundling, I think a huge transition already happened, and this transition we saw, and when I came to EVN, it was done. So a liberal market.
So to split distribution from generation and transmission.
Exactly. Yeah, I think it happened 2000 in the 2000s, around 2000, 2001, something like this. It started. And then 2015, I came to EVN as a young intern. So all of this happened already. And so in that department, in that team, it was super innovative, super fast, a lot of interesting new topics. And before you were probably and the colleagues before were thinking maybe in decades, and I think that was good and reasonable, and that's the reason why we have a very good grid. We have a lot of hydropower plants in Austria, and so that's the work of the grandfathers. So my grandfather was shaking the concrete that it's strong.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh,
and he was for days not seeing sunlight and making all of these Danube's hydropower plants.
So you
wow.
you grew up like with.
That was a long time before.
I don't know, but your family is related with energy sector.
Actually,
in certain way.
He was good in shaking the concrete. He had no idea what it was good for. In the end,
who knew?
But I remember once together, my brother and I, we took our grandparents and then we checked these power plants, and then he told the old stories when they drive from the region they originally came. That's called Waldviertel, Woodquarter, and they drove down then for spending a week. Also, my uncle was working there in this company back then, and they built, I think, one after the other, like 10 of these hydropower plants.
Yeah, in the whole Danube, I think you have plenty of them. At least 10, I remember, maybe more.
Yeah, and you have interesting.
Now I came a little bit off topic.
No.
It's always nice to have those kind of anecdotes. We had a cat.
Sorry. Now I remembered what I wanted to say before. So I think our grandparents provided all of this, and they thought long term in decades, and this is still our benefit today. But now we see a huge fast energy transition. I think it's also good, important, and now on another way I try to be part of it, and I think we all are. And their flexibility, faster, newer processes, new market, new incentives, and so on, all is happening at the same time. So I didn't came to EVN to bring my knowledge and change everything, and now we are fast because I'm here. They were already fast, they were already smart, and I was lucky to be part of that and also bring my strengths in it. But I was mainly on the receiving side, get all my knowledge about how this is working. There are very, very good, fast, smart people there.
And when you just arrived in 2015, working for EVN, evaluating VPP solutions, and what was the motivation and what were the other options? And what did you see in the VPP market back then and now, 10 years, 11 years, fast forward, especially with the whole integration of all the new renewables as well? What changes do you see?
Back then we had this decision to make, this previous project, and the solution was not really turning out that way we wanted it to have. So two options: we stop all of this and say, okay, we market our assets and our generation portfolio as we did always. So we don't change, practice it as long or the same way we always did. Or we kind of try to actively, that would be the passive way, or to actively try to go into the flexibility market on several levels. So from the bigger utilities, but down to the household customer. And then our decision was, I think, brave, and I'm happy that we took the decision. And then also it was a very good match with CyberGrid back then. And we made a market analysis. We tried to find out, already had good experience, what is not working, what is fully automated. Software was super important for us because we knew that's relevant when you have, instead of 1 day ahead trade a day, and then you have 96 energy auctions. Then we knew 96 times a day, nobody's willing to press every quarter hour a button. So that was clear. Fully automation was important. Scalability was important. So we don't want to just have our own assets serviced, but also external assets. So I think that was the active decision, and I'm happy that's the only right decision, to be active on the market. You see a chance and you take it.
And how do you see the market today, comparing with the previous, when you started?
Yeah, when I started, I mean, I also had the luck and the chance to being an intraday optimizer, not full time, but we have a trading desk, and I was from time to time jumping into that role, so to be the trader in the night, on the weekend, or so on. So all of these trainings, all of the system, all of the markets I actively participated in. This last 11 years, a lot changed. So in the beginning, it was not just the room and the infrastructure changed, but also especially the degree of automation completely changed. So algorithmic trading, more and more is automized overnight. Back then, we need to observe it and be on the desk. Now, mostly can be fully automated and is running autonomously. And just if there is then an issue, and this is the most important thing, to have limits, guidelines, and good failure and notification system, that the human strength is to have the responsibility, and the AI strength is to do this autonomous processes and to autonomously fast, secure work.
And also, Philip, before we dive in deeper, I want you to also tell us, define flexibility and what exactly flexibility as a service means.
Yeah, for us, we are always talking about flexibility, and I think most people are wondering, what is this flexibility? Yeah? And we see, especially when we talk to customers or industrial customers, they talk with their language to us, and they say that we need this process heat there, and that's why on the side there is this electricity generation and so on. And we talk about the flexibility, and then we try also to be the translator to exchange between these two worlds. And flexibility, I see generation or consumption asset is controllable and have the possibility to increase the generation or the consumption, and have this flexibility within limits, and it's plannable, controllable, then it's flexibility which can be used then for different services. We use it mainly for stabilizing or to help the Austrian TSO to stabilize the frequency, but it's also for curtailments, for instance, or if there is if the grid is overloaded, then this curtailment reserve,
stabilizing
reserve, it's called. If too much electricity is flowing, then you need to reduce the electricity. So there's two different things. One is to save the frequency, that the generation consumption is in balance, and the other one is that the grid is not overheated.
And you're managing flexibility as a service. So who is the consumer and who is the provider?
In our flexibility as a service team, we have a big stream. Is our main customers are someone who has flexibility and want to have a revenue out of this flexibility. So whenever someone with a small power plant or a big power plant wanted to go on these ancillary service markets, then we are the perfect service provider for that. We call it customer onboarding. So the customer comes to us and we guide him through all the process from the first sales contact to then contracting, pre-qualification, then the telemeter control connection to the asset. And then we also make a signal test, activation test, and then it's possible to earn money with it and have it on the market. That's just one stream, and we have also some very good running side streams like consulting, for instance. So we are also experts on simulating, calculating revenues for battery energy storage system. So for BESS systems.
Very demanded now.
Very demanded, yeah. Interestingly, they are very specific usually. So most of the people come and say, hey, just tell us what we can earn. We say, okay, you want to know it exactly, you want to know an average. And this average is standalone somewhere. And then you can say, oh, it's earning that much. But usually you have grid constraints, you have a co-location, maybe with a renewable energy generation source, and so on and so on. And in the end, with all of that constraints, they still want to know, okay, if I now invest in that, how much money I can make that then. And I think we are expert also in that. So since 2 years, we are providing that service, and it's running excellent.
And being part within a utility, how much of that is an enabler and how much of that restrict you?
I mean, on the utility side, it's just enabling. The restrictions come more from regulation side, or when the grid has not more capacity. But actually, it's also an interesting conversation. Maybe we'll talk later then about the new electricity law. Is that what is now supporting the grid, what is system supporting these terms, and what is then kind of need to pay this grid fees, or where reduced grid fees and so on.
If you could walk us through, how do you manage to have a dump asset like a biogas power plant, for example, to a high value market asset? How do you do it?
So we never call an asset dump.
That was quote
in the first place. But I understand what you mean. I think every technology, every asset type has strengths and weaknesses. We can just use what the asset is capable of. So there are restrictions in, I don't know, ramping time. Is it fast enough maybe for AFR? Then we try to bring with good concepts and algorithm the asset to the higher market. I already mentioned some terms. So AFR is this secondary control, or MFR is the tertiary control, a little bit slower, a little bit less activations.
And those are ancillary services,
yes,
at the end.
Exactly.
Okay. And you can provide it because you integrate more technology on it.
Okay, now I try to explain it briefly. What is ancillary services? There are these 3 markets, primary, secondary, tertiary. In English, it's called FCR, for frequency curtailment reserve. AFR and MFR. AFR is standing for automated frequency restoration reserve, and MFR manual. And they have different ramping times, or different time spans when they need to be activated. So first is primary, that's immediately frequency measurement. So it's measuring the frequency, and whenever there is a deviation, then it's activated directly on the asset. So that's a little bit different to AFR. AFR is also kind of measuring APG is measuring the frequency within the control area of Austria and wherever, because the frequencies are global. APG is checking the frequency deviation within the control area of Austria. Whenever activation in Austria is then necessary, they activate then AFR, and a little bit time delayed. So it's 30 seconds, 5 minutes, 12.5 minutes for the activations. And that means how smart is your asset, to name it the other way, or how fast is the asset. You can play on different markets. But
so it's a time thing. How fast?
Mainly a time thing.
And what are the ranges? Milliseconds, seconds?
These are the 30 seconds for FCR from till full activation time. This 5 minutes. I can also say 300 seconds, or this 12.5 minutes.
Yeah, just getting you back from a bit of to also understand virtual power plants. And if you think that VPP is also kind of truly a firewall against the blackouts that we see. And in terms of grid stability, because flexibility as a service is something that it also challenges stability. And grid stability is the talk of the town. What happened in Poland, and also in Germany, and last year in Spain. So, how do you see, and also do you see VPP being part of the firewall for all the stabilization that we?
I would maybe not call it firewall, but maybe last wall of defense. to hold the frequency, and the frequency is a term to see that if the frequency drops too strong or increases too fast, but mainly drops too fast, then all of this blackout danger is happening. And usually all this, if you read then in the news, almost a blackout and so on, if you go then through the days, weeks later, then a chronology is published and what exactly happened, then most of the time it's a chain in failures, mainly then a human failure somewhere happened. Some operator maybe operated one important transformator wrong in the wrong direction and so on, and these are then the most relevant of failures of this long failure chain. But usually it's so complex, the grid and the operation of the grid, that once I heard it's the most complex system humans created, right? And humans were on the moon, and we have the internet, and still the energy system is the most complex system of all of them. And I think there are so many already good implemented and secure borders that nothing is happening. And actually in Europe, we have very, very less of this energy outages, right? So it's very well and strong and resiliently built, the whole energy system. But still, with a mix and chain of failures, whenever there is a chance, a failure, and in 1,000 code lines, there are four code lines for sure wrong. So more and more of this complexity can also lead then to failures, and if there is the right chain of failures, then of course this can always happen.
And with all of these virtual power plants connected and helping the grid to be the last line of defense, how are you addressing potential cyber risks?
Yeah, I think that becomes also more relevant. Back then it was hosted in some server center at the utility, and now more and more is outsourced somewhere in the cloud, in the data center. It's leading in two different directions. On the one hand, it's good that it's when it's in the cloud, you cannot directly attack a cloud because usually it's part here, part there, and it's backup in each other. On the other hand, it's a lot more digitalized. So whenever a hacker is good, then he cannot hack just one utility, but if he's really good, then he can hack the whole system in worst case. But it's always increasing, the hackers become better and the defense systems are becoming better all the time. And I think it also helps that it's super diverse, that it's not just one system centralized for everything, but there are different VPPs running with very intelligent IT sec people who takes care and try to defend it. All of these encryption VPNs, there are so many mechanisms to protect it to outside, to have it gear redundant, and so on and so on. So in the end, I think also hackers have a harder and harder job too.
Yeah, actually, we are exploring the organization of hackathons, which is a IT concept, but to bring it into energy. So we are introducing more and more the concept of energy security, and it could be cybersecurity, like these risks, or also infrastructure security. So we can explore it later. But now I wanted to ask you for, we have heard that in Europe is being used Picasso and Mari. So if you could explain what they mean and how far the flexibility can go in, like one asset here in Austria can help in other countries. Just to know what do they mean and how they work.
Picasso is for AFR, and Mari, the M, I remembered standing for MFR, tertiary. And it's cross-border balancing markets. So that means that you can trade your flexibility, or your flexibility is used not in your own control area only, but it's also can be also used then for others. Very important. There are borders and there are grid constraints on the borders. So just as much as the grid is able then to provide, for instance, if an Austrian asset, one of our assets is jumping in for Portugal deviation in the frequency, then of course there need to be the capacity of the grid over the borders free that we can deliver it. And so there is still a core value of flexibility within the own country. Or for me, it helps to explain it usually to compare these services, these ancillary services with firefighting. I always compare this firefighting example. So that means in that term that within your region, within Austria, we have firefighters that can drive to Portugal to fight the fire, but at least a certain amount of firefighter need to stay in Austria to make sure. I mean, there can also come then firefighters from Czech Republic to help in Austria, but still also the roads need to be free. It doesn't if the road doesn't provide the fire or cannot bring the firefighters then to Portugal, then they are useless, right? We also need to take care of that. But that is the idea behind. And why I compare it with firefighters, before I wanted to explain a little bit what is this FCR, EFR, MFR. They are in different markets. So one important difference is the activation speed. One is also the likelihood of activation. So the activation probability is different in this market. And for instance, FCR is in both directions, is symmetric. EFR and MFR, they are divided into positive, negative. And MFR and EFR are divided into this capacity market and energy market, power and energy. You can also say it like this. And I like to compare it with firefighters because here it's clear for that service, even if there is no fire, by waiting, you get paid.
It's a good analogy.
This is capacity. And when there is fire and you drive with your firefighter car there and
they drop water, so that's the.
And then there is a price for the water you you provide.
It's a good analogy. Good.
Yeah, and just going deep into this firefighting machine that you have, and you call it CyberNOC. Tell us about CyberNOC a bit first as a platform. And also utility of it going forward compared to an operator. What will be the difference? Because how does the platform itself manage the volatility of the market and the negative price or sequences like that?
Now I jump again a little bit back into time. Back then I was project manager to implement the CyberNOC at EVN, right? That's the new software. We're going to use it. And in that time, also the Mari, or first the Picasso go live happened, and then the Mari go live. And for us, that was one of our main decisions was we now need an autonomous system which allows our assets and our firefighter cars, to come back to that, to participate active on the two markets. The capacity market is this day-ahead auction market. Austrian TSO makes sure every day that on the next day there are enough firefighters. So for that we need a fully automated system, but even more for the energy market, because the energy market also gave them the chance, if you're not accepted with your bids on the capacity market, you still have the chance to go on the energy market, and without getting paid for capacity, you can get paid for energy. And that's happening every quarter hour, so 96 times per day. We kind of implemented all of these Picasso Mari rules back then when it went live, and that was one of the biggest strengths of back, or is still one of our biggest strengths, but that was kind of very, very new back then, because we were also, I think, one of the first, or even the first, who were able to be active then on the Picasso and the Mari market. Another very important thing for us was, before we had the pain that it was very difficult when a new asset needed to be connected, and it was a very pain. every asset, we always wanted to standardize it, but every asset was somehow specific. And within a very stiff and old-fashioned software, it was almost impossible to customer-friendly. We always need also the software provider to also parameterize, and it was very expensive, time-consuming, and a lot of pain to add one external asset. And for us, it was super important. Doesn't matter external or internal. Whenever there's a new asset, we want to be fast. We want to do it by our own. We want to be scalable. That we have the potential to bring a lot of flexibility into our VPP. And I think that was one of the biggest strengths. But of course, there happened a lot development. That was our luck or our profit at EVN back then when we kind of once we called it, we married a marriage, EVN and CyberGrid. That was one of our big strengths, to develop then something together, to develop something for a European market. And the Picasso rules are very similar. It doesn't matter if it's Germany, Austria, or Portugal, Croatia, Norway. It's very similar then. And that was, if you have one system for Picasso, then you can use it almost everywhere.
Okay, so Picasso and Mari gives like the framework where your algorithm can play, kind of, to make bids into the market, right?
Yes, or Picasso and Mari are these cross-border markets, and they have certain rules. For instance, one of the harmonized rule is a capacity bid is 4 hours long. And then our algorithm, of course, need to forecast, calculate, and all of this, and send automated bids then to the trading platform and so on for these market rules.
Okay, so the question is, if it's an algorithm and now we are using more AI, is everything automatized? What happened with the bid? It's 3,000 euros per megawatt hour. Do you still have this panic bottom? Where is the human control in the loop?
Yeah, ancillary services and balancing energy is even more extreme. So we have prices up to 15,000 euros per megawatt hour. So positive, negative, also that happened. But for me, it shows that more flexibility is needed, that the market is not completely liquid yet. It's really needed. And sometimes we need to activate even very, very expensive flexibility to be stabilized. And it's still a lot cheaper than a blackout in the end. And so for sure, like on this side, we and our algorithm need to take care that we are not, how is this called? I think in algo trading is this thick finger or so, that you place a bid, you mean maybe minus 15 and then it's minus 15,000, or you compare you want to type in megawatt and then it's kilowatt or whatever. So this thick button, this you need to take care, or the system need to provide you then an alarm if you really want to place this bid, if you want to place it manually. And this parameterization, this strategy, this also this backup mechanisms and so on, they need to be trained, strengthened, tested all the time, that this is not happening. In the end, there need always be a human in responsibility. So it's maybe interesting. Similar thought is in autonomously driving. It's also the question, who is responsible when a person gets killed, and who decides should be a kid killed or 8 old people walking on the street and so on. And I think in our algorithms we are not there yet to have this fully AI, artificial intelligence yet, but very strong, trained within borders system to be also built not for the perfect day, but for a day where there are some data missing and where the previous system has a failure and the interface is changing, and still you want to participate on the market, and it's quite an important service. Like that's why I like also to compare it with firefighting.
And in the dystopian future, could you imagine electrical system operated fully automated with AI, for example?
I'm not sure if I'm more afraid or excited about that. But I think I'm more on the conservative side on that. I think the final decision should be made by human, and I think we still have some advantages against above AI. And I think we have still overall picture, and we can take more parameters into account. For instance, there was the flood in Lower Austria.
Yeah, I was stuck, so I know it very vividly.
Okay, and I mean, in these times, a lot of good human decisions were made that to prevent even a lot more damage and even risk for someone losing the life and so on. I'm not sure if in that extreme scenarios AI is able to take the right decision and to always provide the full picture and all of the information. I think, I don't know. I think in some ways it could also be the other way around. In Lower Austria with EVN, we were a little bit closer and saw all what happened, and all what was not happening because some very good decisions were made up front. But in that scenario, I'm not sure. I would be still a little bit scared when AI is taking all of these decisions. I don't know. Would you like someone at AI doctor is operating you already? Maybe with support, right? But there should be still a person standing next to it and observe it and have the responsibility in the end.
Yeah. Also talking about the traditional assets now, since biogas and hydro, they're also flexibility options, right? So do you think hydro, in Austria, there's a lot of hydro storage, and you think they're as effective as going forward as Tesla Mega Pack, or how do you rate them as a flexibility asset?
I mean, what I like so much about hydro is, I think as Austrians, you need to like hydro. It's renewable, right? It's already here.
And unlike nuclear.
And it's maybe seasonal storage. And we don't have nuclear, and I think that's good as it is.
70% hydro in Austria?
I think the electrical energy is 70, two-thirds around. And that's a lot. It's because we have the Alps, and we don't have that huge consumption in electricity. I mean, still, but for 8-9 million and not for 80. What I like is about you can also have seasonal storage. And compared to a battery with the losses is losing energy anyway, because it needs to be cooled when it's operated, and round trip efficiency is always less than 100%. Of course, there are some losses. Compared to a hydropower plant, whenever it's raining, it's loading your storage, right? And it's built for decades. That's why I really like hydropower plants. But nevertheless, it's impressive how cheap batteries already are. It's definitely part of the solution. They're super fast, they're precise, and they're definitely a very important enabler for our energy transition. Both technologies have their strengths. Or to name also biogas. I mean, whenever we can use biogas generation to reduce the generation and store the biogas then for later, it's even the best. Then you can save energy. You can have it then later, and then a very simple flexibility asset has a good impact to the overall system.
Yeah.
And now moving to Central and Eastern Europe region, because CyberGrid was founded in Slovenia, you still have teams and projects there, but you also were telling us that you have projects in other countries in Central and Eastern Europe. how do you think the challenge to implement more virtual power plants there? It's more related to the grid outdated infrastructure or more software skills, like digital skills?
Yeah, we as CyberGrid, we have the CyberNOC. We operate it at EVN. We provided service, but also we have a software as a service stream. So we provide the software to other utilities. We have it up and running in Croatia, Bulgaria, North Macedonia, and now we go also on the German market very soon. Maybe when the podcast is online, we are already on the German market. So we go to more and more and a lot of other countries. And my impression, I'm not directly into that project, but my impression is that we are a little bit ahead, because our Mari go live and our Picasso go live, it was, I think, 2022, 2023, something like this. We already had collaborations with German TSOs, with Czech TSOs, and there was already I would call it a pilot of Mari up and running, and our liberalization of the market happened longer time ago. So what Eastern Europe is now doing is to make the same transition in a lot less time. I think what I see, they do a very good job. I'm always impressed how smart the people are who are leading the other project and implementing all of this software solution. They are super curious, they're super interested in that, but already bring so much knowledge. They also have very, very good technical education and so on. So I think they're able to do it. And I'm talking here, they have everything in the future. I think they already implemented a lot, but all of this cross-border is working especially good if you have a lot of borders where other market participants are. And I think that's a little bit a bottleneck right now, that, for instance, when one country is the first active member, then they can cross-border trade, but there is no country ready on the other side of the border yet. But now more and more countries are active, and we deliver also, I think, software, our CyberNOC, and that brings them now more into new markets in cross-border, and I think they're a little bit behind, but they are really running fast to come on the same level. And I think in that case, digitalization is super important. I think that's the first step to make the digitalization, and then bring new assets, battery energy storage systems, and so on in a second step on the market. Or even better would be in parallel, if you don't have to choose.
If you had the budget.
I mean, we heard in Bulgaria they're just going full throttle about batteries. They're putting a lot of batteries. So you think the digitalization is the low-hanging fruit, and then going for the batteries?
Yeah, or to use what you have already. So when you have, they also have hydropower plants, we know, because part of EVN Group, a utility in Bulgaria and North Macedonia, and all the assets they already have, or they also build new assets, and also they have a lot of PV generation, for instance, and even a lot more PV hours or sun hours than we have in Austria. So they have other chances. They should use it, and whatever they have, they should already bring them into a market and make the market more liquid. And when the market is functioning and the neighboring market is functioning, and
it's like a snowball.
Then I think this is a snowball effect. And so use what you have, and you need some digitalization to make use of this flexibility, and best case at the same time build new technologies into the grid.
Yeah, and now going into one of our theses in the energy bridge is the technology is going faster than regulation, and energy is super regulated sector. And now Austria has a new electricity law. So if you could tell us briefly what is it about, and what would you add to this law to enable more flexibility?
Yeah, I think every, 10, 15 years, there's a new electricity law coming. I think it's more supposed to every 10 years or so, when it feels necessary. Maybe this also will be shorter terms in future. But I think all the energy market was desperately waiting that it to be published. They needed to plan, they need security, they need legal certainty. I'm not an expert on that, but we have still some issue as long as that's not decided. And I still, when now we record it, it's not 100% decided. And for us, one of these terms is this: if an asset is system friendly, it has some advantages. And what does system friendly mean? Especially if you want to build new assets. So when a hydropower plant is 80 years old, then it's not waiting for the new law. But especially if you want to build tomorrow something new, you want to have some investments into generation, into also in our system for decision making, we need clarity. And I think now part of this clarity we have, but still not some certainty how it's interpreted in some terms. For instance, this is a battery system friendly? Is it system friendlier if it's a co-location with a renewable energy generation? And this need to be decided better soon, that all these investments keep on going and happening, that we have in this asset and this flexibility.
So you would add more clarity in definition.
Yeah, I would. Two things. I think it helps if it's clear up front, and if not, then it needs to be clear how it's interpreted or how it's then operated in reality. How e-control defines this is system friendly, that it can have a grid fee reduction, and that's not system friendly. It needs to be clear for all market participants.
Yeah, we had a interview with Wind Association, and Florian told us that they prefer to have clear rules, even if they are not completely aligned with them, but it's preferable to have rules clear.
I would agree on that. And I think you have maybe less or different investments or whatever, but as long as it's not decided, nobody's investing. Exactly. Everybody's waiting. What's going to happen when it is sure? Let's wait. And I think that's helping nobody.
Yeah, Philip, looking at the time, it's very insightful, but using the flexibility to get into our last round, the time flexibility, we call it the quickfire round. So basically, we ask you a question, and you can just tell us quickly like what you prefer. I mean, because you have been an engineer and you're now also an executive. Bit of management part. So rapid response. What do you think the best asset for frequency control? A 10 megawatt battery or 10 megawatt hydro turbine?
I don't know the capacity, the storage. So if it's 10 megawatt hours or thousands, so I would take the hydro.
Okay.
Very Austrian. If you would have 1 billion euros, how would you invest it to accelerate energy transition or promote more flexibility?
I think I would separate it. I think a grid still plays a huge role to enable or make all of this happen. And digitalization, that I think where all of this flexibility management system also comes into place. And yeah, also some new missing technologies like batteries, I think could be a game changer. But with digitalization, I mean also to go more down into smaller flexibilities, maybe even the household, e-mobility, storage system, PV, and so on, households.
So flexibility in all levels.
In all levels, I think then the billion is gone very quickly.
And which month of the year the grid is getting tested the most? The summer months of August, when all the wind and the solar is pumping it up, or in January when it's a dark month, nothing is happening?
Yeah, I think January is more difficult. Because I think you always can curtail easy, but when you have no renewable generation, then it can be tough.
Picasso or Mari? Which acronym gives you more headaches?
Headaches. I had some headaches, and I was not the only one. I think back then when we implemented it in our project, I would say Picasso, because the Picasso go live was first. That was a little bit harder in the beginning.
Yeah, and you already shared your apprehension about AI, not just apprehension, but also like good concern. But what do you think about AI in energy? It's still underutilized or it's overhyped?
Yeah, I think right now it's underutilized. We in CyberGrid and EVN, I see very active movements into finding new use cases and already paint a very futurist picture, and like every idea is allowed, and this is impressive, and none of us knows in which direction it goes. But I think really in the daily processes we use it a lot too less in general, and also in the energy sector.
In your role now, if you see the frequency dropping to 49.5, what is the first thing you do?
Maybe I would call the old colleagues in the trader room to ask what's going on, but they don't need my disturbance. No, maybe I will try to see which flexibility we have in the market and try to push more.
Which firefighter, right?
Yeah, that's maybe that activates the firefighter instinct, right? To press and run direction to help the frequency.
Yeah, and also Philip, from your role in being part of a major utility here, you have like the more clear picture of how the grid is going to look like in, let's say, 7-8 years from now. How do you see in 2035 the grid looking in Austria and also all over Europe?
I think a little bit more hybrid than it is today. But I think if you really want to make investments into transformers and so on, you need to do it today that you have them in 10 years, all what you need. So I think we will still notice it. That's our grid. What we know now, in 35 years, it will look similar, but it definitely needs investments. It needs to be smarter, more hybrid, more interconnected.
Well, we're going to see this video 10 years after and see how it goes. Yeah. Just to finalize, which advice would you give to new electrical engineers, for example, who are entering this sector, or new professionals in energy in general?
Yeah, that's more on the social skill level, I would say, but stay hungry, stay foolish. That was Steve Jobs back then said. But I think to bring in your own energy, your own motivation, your interest and your strength. And I think if you're young and you're active, motivated, you will find your way, even if you cannot imagine where all of this then leads to. And I think that's very important to concentrate mainly on yourself and your active motivation, what you can bring in, and not come into the environment you are and adapt to the environment. So bring in yourself and your strengths, and then you will find your own way.
Amazing. On that note, thank you very much, Philip. Finally, it was you came, but it was worth all the wait that we had to do.
Yeah, we knew it. We knew it was good.
Yes, thank you very much. I really had fun.
Yeah, amazing. So thank you for coming again, Philip, and thanks to the community for watching the episode, and stay tuned for more episodes, and keep tuned for the forum 2nd and 3rd of June. So see you. Ciao, ciao.